Hey guys, it's your girl Coco Kenzie back at it with another video. Today we are going to be talking about the hot topic of drag queen story time, story hour. It is the hot button issue that has tempers flaring, emotions rising, so much so that some on one side, are even going as far as to accuse those that decide to take their children to these type of events as being predatory, as trying to make their children gay, queer, or just plain weirdos. So I said it's time for your girl to come into the conversation. So let's talk about it. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided to take one of my sons to drag queen story time. This is when it was fairly new. It was just kind of rolling out. Now, we would always go to the library. It was one of our favorite activities to do each week was story time. So in that regards, it was no different. What was different was when we showed up to this particular event. Normally when we come in, we just find a seat as we did on this day. And the librarian came in and she was checking the room and she said, well, no, I'm gonna need you guys to leave. And we were familiar with her. So it was kind of, no worries, whatever. We trusted whatever she needed to do. And as we were walking out, we saw a bomb squad go in, police units, firemen. And I was like, what in the world am I where I want to be, child? And so I asked her, I said, well, what is going on? And she said, well, while it wasn't at this location, just as these events had been rolling out, there had been a lot of threats to these different types of events. And I was thinking threats. And she said, well, yeah, bomb threats and other kind of deadly threats. I was like, man, people are willing to kill the children. And that devastated me. But, okay, fine. Now, as we say that, I will always try to be fair in my conversation. So if you're already a part of the channel, then you know that. But I will not compromise truth or integrity, but I will always try to be fair. So I want to get this out the way in the spirit of fairness and just so we can move forward in honest conversation. So when you have these kind of social topics come up, it's very passionate, as I stated. It's a lot of emotion behind it. And there is a small group on all sides, and I'm talking about all kind of, not beyond just this social topic, I'm talking about all topics, where there is a small group that indeed does exploit children. There is a small group on all sides that also subconsciously, and obviously I've already said consciously, will use children to try and push their narratives, agendas. They will use their children as poster childs to push whatever their way of thinking is. There is a small group that does do that. However, to simplify it just to that and make it a black and white way of thinking, we're not we won't be able to move forward in honest conversation because we're not peeling back those layers and those nuances that have to be discussed in order for, us to move anywhere. We have to be able to get a little bit uncomfortable. We have to talk about the layers behind each point. So I hope I bring some of that. Let's talk about it, guys. So let's go back. So if you are a part of my channel, then I've already talked about it many times, but I was bullied horribly. Elementary school, middle school, high school. I was quirky. I'm still quirky. The weirdo. I didn't dress the way that people thought I should dress. I didn't listen to the music that people thought I should listen to. And then on top of that, now having a neurodivergent child who has been diagnosed as being on the spectrum, your girl definitely can say, even though I've been clinically diagnosed, I can say with whole confidence that I'm definitely landing somewhere up on that spectrum in hindsight. And so there was some stuff that people just didn't get about me and some social cues obviously I was missing. But in high school, one of the freeing moments, and it was like a Disney movie or any high school movie where you see the cliques. Well, you can guess what clique I was a part of. I was a part of the Misfit Outcast clique. And there were there were the goths, the skateboarders, the gamers, the nerds, the disabled or chronically ill kids. And a big part of that also was the gay kids. And there were several in that group for me, several of the guys who were so amazing and gave me such grace and really, really protected me. In times where I really felt alone And in particularly one who, did drag as much as one could or that they would allow at that time. Now, did I care about the drag? Did I care about them being gay? Absolutely not. What I cared about and what I was touched by was how they looked out for me. And I always, always cherished that. As a young adult, I moved out of state, which is a whole nother story that I've shared before with a boyfriend. And as quickly as we moved out of state is as quickly as it fizzled out. And so there I was out of state alone and still quirky, weird, missing all kind of social cues. And so at my job at the time, people were really, really mean. But there was this one person in particularly. At the time, they hadn't transitioned yet. They have now, but at the time they hadn't. And but in all fairness, also, some of their experience wasn't as hard as some because this person looked gorgeous. They were fooling lots of people. Okay, let me just say that. But nonetheless, they were really, really stood up for me when they didn't have to. And so something came about with, the normal things that you hear about where the family was not pleased and kind of disowned and wound up kicking this person out of the house. And this person had been so amazing to me. Like, I didn't have a whole lot to offer, but what I did have was a place. And so I was so, so happy to be able in return to help this person who had helped me so, so much. And it was one of the best experiences of my life because they were so good to me and we had so much fun. And that was just something that I will never, never forget. And that I still keep in touch with this person to this day who I still cherish every moment. And so you fast forward. When I had my son, as he got to be just a little bit older, because kids, will say whatever, they stare, they do things. So, I wanted to make sure, because this group that had been so good to me, and because, some of the people are no longer with us for different reasons, and some, I moved back to my home state. So one of the dearest friends I don't get to see all the time, but what I wanted was my son to be able to navigate and not stare, not feel weird, and be able to ask questions. And also just know that, people are people and people have their own experiences, but to be able to feel comfortable and be okay, even people that are different from you, even if you don't agree, but to be able to navigate these spaces and not make anyone else feel uncomfortable for who they are, because that's who they are. It doesn't have to be who you are, but it's okay for all of us to be different. So I just wanted him to feel comfortable in that space. And since we were already going to story times all the time, I just looked at it as an opportunity to, employ that. And I was waiting. And so again, I still, questioned my own motives. I mean, and just in full honesty, because I was sitting waiting for the question so I could say my speech to my son about, yep, see, this is inclusion, this is that, and this. And I was waiting. And of course, you know what he did? He asked me absolutely nothing. I was like, wait a minute. The whole reason I wanted you to be able to notice and ask me, mommy, so I could give my speech about feeling comfortable and being okay with people. And then when I sat back and reflected, I was like, you know what? This is exactly what you wanted. You want your child. He could care less. All he wanted to make sure was that whoever was reading Pete the Cat did it correctly, said the story with the same enthusiasm that it had been read with before. And I was like, that's it. That's it. And I really, really loved it. I absolutely loved it. So fast forward, my son has been going through a really hard time, and I've shared that on other videos. If you're already a part of the family where he is being bullied for the same reasons, the same hereditary reasons, I'm sure, being quirky, whatever, fine. And it was something that I brought up to one of the admins at the school he goes to. He's homeschooled, but he does do some different programs. And he does a program with about 15 other gifted kids for a science program. They come in. And I mentioned my son's experience with being bullied to the admin. And I didn't like kind of her response. I didn't think she took it serious, whichever. So, of course, Mommy Bear comes out. And I was ready to pull him immediately. But I'm also a parent that believes in giving kids some say. I believe that it's okay for kids to have some say. Now, obviously, there's a time where mommy and daddy, we will need to pull rank, but I at least wanted to sit down and have the conversation and let him be a part of it. And he was very adamant that he did not want to be pulled out of the class. So I said, okay. I said, fine, But I was like, mommy is going initially, just to go feel everything out, see what is happening. Now, on open house, I met his teacher, so I already knew that his teacher was trans because I did the thing of walking up to the teacher because I didn't know. And I was like, hi, and you are Mrs. And he was like, I am Mr. And I was like, oh, well, hello, Mr., what their name is. And I was just like, okay, totally fine. Because at the end of the day, all I care about is how you treat Connor and what he's learning. So as I was sitting in on the class, I looked at this teacher and I watched this teacher have so much patience with these children. I looked at him have so much patience with mine. My son is very curious, very inquisitive. He has so many questions, and sometimes it is not received well. And I watched how he treated, and it was so delicate with him, and I just loved it so much, and I was so grateful. And it made me think about my own experience when I was younger. I had a teacher. This teacher was not trans, but let me tell you the story. So I had this teacher, and I remember being about my son's age. He comes out, I remember his first day, and we were young and stupid. And so I just remember him smelling so good, and all the girls loved him. We all loved him. He dressed like the people on MTV, he looked cool. He was just it. And I remember my first couple of experiences with him. I hated him. He was so I just felt like he was not patient with me. He was not nice. It was just an awful experience. Well, fast forward, as a young adult, my mom and I were flying somewhere. We run into this teacher at the airport. And so I say, oh, hey, Mr. Such and such. And he was nice enough. And immediately he's with his partner. And I was like, mommy, did you know? And she's like, yes, honey. Yes, my dear. And I was like, well, really? I was completely just floored. But I say that to say it did not matter in that moment. It made me think about that situation for myself, and it made me think about my son's situation now, because my son has absolutely no idea that his teacher is trans. He could care less. But I thought about the day when he comes to the knowledge of his teacher being trans. You know what? He is not going to care. What he is going to remember, I think it's one of my favorite quotes in life to go by, and Maya Angelou said it best. People do not remember what you said or did. They are going to remember how you made them feel. And what my son will remember when he looks back is that this teacher, this person who is so much more than a trans person, treated him with respect, was patient, and was so kind to him in a space where other people really made it hard for him. And for me, when I look back on my experiences, I'm not going to minimize these people to just being gay or drag. When I look back and I think about the people that I mentioned who meant the world to me, is these people that looked out for me. Of course, there are, in every group, there are some buttholes. There's some gay buttholes. There's some horrible drag people. But for me, I want people to be able to understand and see that when we look at people, look at them at their heart, because ultimately, once we get to the core that all of us as humans, when we look at people for who they are, take away what you disagree, what you don't like. We can have those conversations, but start at the core, because when we do that, ultimately that's what's most important. So remembering how we treat people, because that is ultimately what everybody is going to remember. So however we decide to move forward in these conversations, let's always start it with love as we go out and navigate the world with other people. There's so much going on. We live in a world with so much bullying and so much ugliness that let's start with love, and let's start the conversation from there. I hope you guys enjoyed my story time and my little rant, and I cannot wait to see what you guys say in the comments, and I will chat with you guys real soon. Love, peace, and so many blessings.